Howdy folks, Kevin here. I've had some questions over the last few days on plant identification. Uh, Not so much as what is this plant, but as how do I identify plants. So I thought I would go over a few things with you today and hopefully make it easier for you. Back in a minute. Okay folks, back. I guess what it's going to come down to is this. I want you to think about probably three things when you're identifying a plant. When we're going to use a plant, we're going to think about four things. But when you're identifying a plant, I want you to think about, number one, 100% positive identification. By that, I mean this. If you are not 100% sure what a plant is and cannot verify it 100%, then don't use the plant. To verify these things, I want you to have two different sources at least, whether that be a field identification guide and an internet source, or two separate field identification guides, or whatever you choose to use. Don't believe the internet experts, and don't believe me 100%. I don't claim to be an expert on any of these things. What I really want you to do is be 100% positive and confident in your own skill. The second thing I want you to think about is what is the plant doing at the present time? And when you're looking at your plant identification guides, they're going to tell you what the natural growing season is for a plant, what the bloom season is for that plant, what the fruiting season is for that plant, so on and so forth. So if you find a plant, say right now in April, that's in full bloom and so on and so forth, and you think it is something, and you look at that plant in your plant identification guides or your online source, whatever, and you see that it's not supposed to bloom until late fall, or early fall, late spring, and it's not now, then you're wrong. You guessed wrong. The third thing I want you to think about is the growing environment that you find the plant in. This is what you're going to go back to your plant identification guides or your internet source or whatever, and you're going to look and you're going to say, I think this is this. All right. Right now I'm in the bottom behind my house, so it's a moist area back down here. The creek is right behind me. There are certain plants that grow in moist environments. There are certain plants that will grow on the banks of the creek. There are certain plants that will grow up on the slopes and on the top of the hills. If I think this plant is something and it's growing in the wrong microclimate or wrong environment, then I'm probably wrong. Okay, now that's not going to say you're not going to have one out of place plant, but if you've got a whole bunch of them, that kind of thing, then you're probably wrong. So remember, identify positive. All right, is the plant doing what it's supposed to be doing for the time of year you found it? And is it growing in the right growing environment? I want you to remember those three things above all else. Rule number one is always going to be positive identification. With that being said, we'll talk about some things about plants. Like I said, I want you to identify on at least two or three things on your plants, and we'll talk about a couple of those now. All right, when you're thinking about identifying plants, there are a few things I need you to think about. The plant identification guides are going to talk about a lot of things. They're going to talk about the growth habit of a plant, what's it shaped like, when does it grow, for certain environments, does it even grow in your area? They're going to talk about the actual structures of the plant. We're not really going to get into the underground stuff today, but we're going to talk about the above ground plant parts, because that's where we all start out anyway. We're going to talk about stalks on plants. For example, is the stalk hollow or is it solid? Is it smooth or is it hairy? We're also going to talk about what kind of hairs these are. Like this hair on the stinging nettle is very different than the hair on these cleavers. They're going to talk about does the hair grow on the leaf, does it grow on the stalk, so on and so forth. They're going to talk about various leaf shapes. This is burdock, this is plantain. When they also talk about leaves, they're going to talk about how the veins run through the leaves. See how the veins on this plantain go from the stem out towards the tip of the leaf and kind of graduate out towards the margin. Where you'll see the veins on this burdock is very, very different. It's not a single vein that goes all the way out. You have the main vein that goes through the middle, and then you've got veins that branch off of that, and then they branch again. That doesn't happen with the plantain. They're going to talk about that in the plant ID guides. You're going to have to think about types of flowers. How many petals? Is it a male, female, or other flower? How many flowers grow on a stalk? Is it multiple flowers on one stalk or just one flower on each stalk? Does the flower nod at the end of the stalk? See how this one nods down at the end? This is a wild violet. Then again, this is also a yellow downy violet. See how the leaves on the cleavers, they go all the way around the stalk in one little line, in one whorl is what this is called. Then there's a space and another set of leaves. You're going to identify all this and verify it with your plant identification guides. And back to rule number 1, always be positive in your identification. That's probably about all I've got to say about this. Talk to you later. See you in the woods.